I've always been sensitive to sounds, not just loud noises, but subtle, almost imperceptible ones. The creak of a floorboard, the distant hum of a refrigerator, the faint scratching behind walls. It occurs sometimes, and I never appreciated it until I moved into the old townhouse on Cedar Avenue. It seemed perfect at first. 3 stories, brick exterior, ivy crawling along one side, and the kind of quiet neighborhood where even the wind felt polite. I was alone, recently divorced, looking for a fresh start. The realtor assured me the previous tenant had left in a hurry, but that everything was perfectly safe. I wanted to believe that. The first night, I unpacked some boxes and slept like a rock. Milo, my dog, immediately claimed the living room as his territory, curling up in a sunbeam by the window. Nothing seemed unusual, but by the second night, I began to notice something strange. Footsteps, not outside, not above, inside the walls. At first, I ignored it. Old houses shift, pipes rattle, wind sneaks through gaps. But these were deliberate, slow, methodical steps, almost like someone pacing just inside the drywall. Milo stiffened, ears pointed for bristling. He growled softly. I shook my head. Old houses make noises. That's all. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it. I lay in bed, the lights dim, listening. The footsteps began at exactly 2:16 a.m., slow, deliberate, moving along the far wall of the bedroom. Then they stopped. Then came scratching. Nails, faint but sharp, scratching along the plaster. I held my breath. Milo whimpered and hid beneath the bed. And then a voice. Soft, raspy, almost a whisper. Daniel. My heart stopped. Milo growled, low and guttural. I couldn't see anyone. There was no one. The townhouse was mine. Empty. I tried talking back. Who's there? I whispered. No answer. Only silence. And then the scratching returned, moving closer. Milo barked and leaped from under the bed, fur bristling. I froze, paralyzed with fear. The footsteps were inside the wall, but they moved in perfect synchronization with my own heartbeat. Over the next week, the sounds escalated. Footsteps, scratching, whispers calling my name. I checked the walls repeatedly, tapping, pressing, knocking. Nothing. No hollow spaces, no secret rooms. The townhouse was solid, but the noises didn't stop. They adapted. They came from everywhere and nowhere. Milo refused to sleep in the bedroom. I began sleeping in the living room, lights on, watching the walls, listening. One night, around 2:16 a.m., I heard it again. The scratching started along the far wall, slow at first. Then a knock. One loud, deliberate knock. My name followed. Daniel. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a hammer and smashed the plaster where the sound was strongest. Dust and fragments fell. Milo barked furiously, and nothing. The wall was solid. No hollow space. No one behind it. Yet the sounds continued. I installed cameras in the living room and bedroom. That night, I watched the footage carefully. The audio picked up faint whispers and scuttling, but visually nothing. Shadows moved across the walls, as if reacting to an unseen presence. One camera even captured the faint impression of a figure leaning against the wall, but when I paused, enhanced, and adjusted brightness, nothing was there. Just a distortion, like heat waves or a shadow that didn't belong. By the second week, the voice became more urgent. Not just my name, but commands. Come here. Daniel, closer. I didn't understand. Closer to what? Who? The walls themselves? I felt the pressure of being watched, not just by eyes, but by something alive, moving just beneath the surface of reality. One night, I couldn't resist. I pressed my ear to the far bedroom wall, heart hammering. The footsteps stopped. The scratching stopped. Silence. And then, unmistakably, directly in my ear. Don't listen. Daniel. I fell back, shaking. Milo whimpered. I could feel the wall almost vibrating beneath my head. Something was inside it. Something patient. Something waiting. The noises spread. Footsteps in the kitchen. Scratching in the living room. Whispers echoing through the hallways. It didn't matter where I was. It was everywhere. I couldn't escape it. I called a realtor. She answered briefly, then hung up abruptly, leaving me with a sense of dread. I considered leaving, but each time I tried to pack, my car wouldn't start, no matter what I did. The lights flickered when I turned the ignition. The walls seemed to hum. I realized it didn't want me to leave. Then came the cold. Not outside. Inside. A creeping cold that followed me from room to room. Windows closed. Heater on. The cold settled in corners, behind doors, along the walls where the footsteps sounded most. And always whispers. Daniel, closer, closer. I started hallucinating. Shadows stretching across walls, shapes moving behind me. Milo refused to move. I slept sitting up, clutching a baseball bat. I could feel eyes watching from the walls, breathing, waiting. One night, I snapped. I started tearing into the walls with a hammer, pulling plaster away, exposing wooden beams. Dust filled the air. Milo barked and growled at empty spaces. And then I saw it. A faint outline pressed between the beams, impossibly thin, stretching along the wall. Not human, not animal, but alive. It recoiled as I shone a flashlight directly on it. Then it whispered, my own voice distorted. Daniel, closer. I screamed. Milo barked and yelped. The outline disappeared. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I moved out the next day. Took Milo, left all my belongings. The townhouse was abandoned. The realtor refused to comment. Neighbors claimed the house was cursed or haunted, but no one explained the walls. No one mentioned the footsteps, the whispers, the shadows pressed against the beams. Even now, I can feel it sometimes in the corners of my mind. Every time I touch a wall, I imagine it breathing, waiting, patient, hungry, learning. Some things aren't outside you. Some things are inside, waiting. And when they call your name, they aren't asking politely. I never believed in the creepy neighbor stories until I met Mr. Crawford. I moved into the small townhouse on Pinecrest Lane on a bright spring afternoon. The neighborhood was ordinary, maybe a little too quiet. Kids played on the street during the day, neighbors waved when passing by, and everything seemed perfectly mundane. Mr. Crawford lived directly next door in 5B. He was in his late 60s, always dressed in a buttoned-up shirt and khakis, with a perpetually thin smile that never reached his eyes. I waved hello the first day. He waved back, lingering just a second too long. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was just friendly. The first week went by without incident. I settled into my new home, unpacked boxes, and tried to ignore Mr. Crawford's quiet presence next door. But then I noticed things, subtle things, lights flicking on in 5B even when I wasn't making noise. Faint sounds of someone moving around when I was home alone. Sometimes when I glanced out my window, I could swear I saw him watching me, leaning slightly to see through my blinds without being obvious. I brushed it off. He was old, curious, probably harmless. Then came the first warning. I was cooking dinner one evening when the lights flickered and the smell of smoke wafted through the air. I wasn't burning anything. Milo, my dog, growled at the wall between our townhouses. I froze. From the thin wall separating our homes, I heard a voice, low and deliberate. You shouldn't be in the kitchen right now. I jumped back, thinking someone had broken in, but the door was locked. The windows were shut. Milo whined, backing away from the wall. The following day, I attempted to confront Mr. Crawford. I knocked on his door. He opened it before I could speak. His smile was calm, but something about his gaze sent a shiver down my spine. You're new here, he said, voice soft, almost melodic. I like to know my neighbors. I smiled nervously. Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Just settling in. He nodded. I know. I saw you moving yesterday. Quite the haul. I blinked. Yeah, I guess. He didn't answer immediately, just stared, and then whispered, softly, almost to himself, I know things about you already. Over the next few days, the unease grew. He knew when I left for work, when I returned. He appeared in the hallway just as I opened the door, sometimes even before I unlocked it. He never said anything threatening, never did anything overt, but the way he watched, with that faint smile, made my skin crawl. Then the noises started. Not from him exactly, from the apartment itself. Strange creaks, scratches, faint whispers through the walls separating our homes. Milo refused to sleep near the wall, whining incessantly. And sometimes I could swear I heard my own name being called in the shadows. One night, curiosity or stupidity made me peek through the peephole in my door. Across the hallway, Mr. Crawford's door was open. I hadn't seen him move. Inside, shadows shifted unnaturally, as if the air itself moved to form a figure. He wasn't there, but I could feel him watching, learning. Then the voice came again, low and deliberate. "Daniel, come closer." I stumbled back, heart racing. Milo growled a low, trembling sound. That night, I barely slept. The following morning, I tried to get some sense of normalcy. I left the townhouse for a walk, hoping to shake off the paranoia. But everywhere I went, I felt watched. The sensation was unnerving, like someone or something was always a step ahead of me. Returning home, I found my mail in the hallway. One envelope stood out. No return address. Inside, a single piece of paper read, "You can't hide from what's next door. I know where you go, I know what you do, and soon you'll see." I crumpled the note in my hands, heart racing. This wasn't just paranoia. This was real. The next week was a descent into madness. Every time I turned on a light, he appeared. Every time I moved through my apartment, I heard footsteps whispering from the walls. I tried calling the police. I tried calling the landlord. No one could help. And when I left the house, I felt the same gaze following me down the street. One night, I finally confronted him. I pounded on his door, demanding answers. He opened it slowly, holding a candle that flickered in the dim light. His thin smile never wavered. "You want to know why I watch?" he asked softly. "Because you can't see them. But I can. They're in your walls, Daniel. In your rooms. Watching. Waiting. And they like to see who comes home." I laughed nervously. "Who? What?" He didn't answer, just stared, and then whispered, "They know everything. And I know everything about you. It's safer if you listen." I stopped sleeping. Milo refused to eat. Every creak, every shadow, every whisper made my heart race. I began recording audio, hoping for proof. The footage was terrifying, faint voices, distorted shapes moving behind the walls, shadows that didn't belong. But it wasn't just a haunting. It was deliberate, intelligent, patient, and always, Mr. Crawford knew. He moved silently through the apartment, never touching anything, never speaking aloud, yet always aware. Waiting. One night, at 2:11 a.m., the whispering escalated. Faint footsteps moved behind my bed, along the walls. I pressed myself against the door, shaking as Milo whimpered. Then, from the thin wall between our apartments, Daniel opened the door. I froze. The voice wasn't human. Not entirely. Distorted, layered, like hundreds of whispers folded into one. I couldn't breathe. I refused. But the pounding continued, growing louder, more insistent. Then a hand, impossibly thin, pale, pressed against the door, sliding slowly, deliberately, as if feeling its way to me. Milo barked and leaped, but I stayed frozen, paralyzed. The next morning, I found the walls scratched in strange patterns. Letters? Symbols? I didn't know. Milo refused to enter the bedroom. I refused to sleep at all. I realized I couldn't stay. I packed everything, grabbed Milo, and left in the middle of the night. Across the street, I saw Mr. Crawford's window. Shadows twisted, forming shapes that shouldn't exist. And his smile. Always that smile. Watching, waiting, patient. Weeks later, I called the landlord. No record of Mr. Crawford ever living there. No forwarding address. Nothing. Yet I could still feel him lingering, as if the townhouse itself remembered. Even now, writing this in a new apartment far away, I feel it. A presence. Watching, waiting, learning. And sometimes, when the lights flicker, I hear the whisper, "Daniel, I know where you are." Some neighbors aren't friendly. Some are not human. And some know too much. You think you know your neighbors. You wave hello, borrow sugar, hear music through the walls. But what if your neighbor isn't just quiet? They're watching, learning, waiting. What I experience changed how I look at every door, every window, every shadow. Some neighbors aren't friendly. Some aren't human. And some never leave. I never expected to move into the building on Linden Street. It was old, overpriced for the city, but the rent was within my budget, and the neighborhood was quiet, too quiet I would later realize. I signed the lease without hesitation, ignoring the vague warnings of my real estate agent about the quirky old tenants and the occasional noises at night. The apartment itself was on the third floor, with wooden floors that creaked and windows that rattled slightly in the wind. From the moment I moved in, I noticed the apartment below, 2B. Its door was always closed. Always. I never saw anyone enter or leave, but sometimes I heard faint thumps and scurrying, as if someone or something was pacing beneath my feet. I chalked it up to old plumbing, loose floorboards, the natural settling of a building nearly 50 years old. I told myself I was imagining it, but the noises grew more deliberate with each passing night. The first night, I was lying in bed when I heard the faintest scratching. It was subtle, rhythmic, and seemed to move along the ceiling, tracing the outline of my bedroom. Milo, my dog, perked his ears, staring intently at the floor. The scratching stopped when I flipped the light switch, but my heart didn't calm. There was a presence, something aware of me, moving beneath my floorboards, watching. I lay awake, listening. I could hear the soft, dragging sound of feet. Not fast, not heavy, but intentional. Then silence. I thought I was imagining things. By the second night, the noises had grown more audacious. At exactly 2:03 a.m., I heard it, the sound of someone walking, pacing, moving in a pattern beneath the floorboards. Then came a whisper, soft, almost seductive. "Daniel." I froze. Milo growled, a deep, warning growl I had never heard before. The whisper repeated, slightly louder. "Daniel, come down." I froze in terror. I lived on the third floor. There was no downstairs that could fit a person pacing directly under me. And yet, the voice was coming from below. I pressed my ear to the floor. Nothing. Only silence, except for the faint heartbeat in my own chest. Over the next week, I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself it was stress, that I was imagining things. But then came the thumps, heavy, deliberate thumps, followed by scratching, then whispers. Sometimes it was my name. Sometimes it was just unintelligible syllables. Something was learning, adapting, watching. One night, I mustered the courage to speak. "Who's there?" I whispered. The response came almost immediately. My own voice, distorted and hollow, whispering back. Down below, I stumbled backward, heart racing, Milo barking and growling at the floor. The room felt smaller, suffocating. The nights became unbearable. I could no longer sleep. Every creak of the old building, every gust of wind against the windows, every distant sound seemed magnified. The apartment below was no longer just a space. It was alive, watching, waiting, and it wanted me. One night, desperate for proof, I set up my phone to record audio. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the sound began. Footsteps pacing the floor, scratches tracing the walls, whispers calling my name. I replayed the recording. The last segment made my blood run cold. A voice, unmistakably my own, whispered, "Come down, Daniel." I didn't sleep again. By the end of the second week, I tried to investigate. I knocked on 2BS door. No answer. Knocked again. Nothing. I listened carefully. Faint footsteps retreated beneath my feet. Then came a dragging sound, moving toward the door. Suddenly, the doorknob turned, slowly, methodically. I jumped back. It hadn't opened before. It wasn't supposed to open. Yet it did. And I could hear breathing, slow, measured, unnatural. I ran back to my apartment, locked the door, and called the landlord. His voice trembled when I explained what was happening. "You have to leave," he said. "I shouldn't have rented that apartment. Ever. They don't like new tenants." That night, I packed my things in a frenzy. Milo yipped and barked at the floor as I gathered my belongings. As I opened my apartment door to leave, I saw it. The door of 2B, wide open. The interior was pitch black, impossible to see into. And from the darkness came a voice. "Daniel, don't leave." I ran, Milo barking, dragging me down the hallway. I didn't stop until I reached the street. I didn't look back. Weeks later, I learned the building had been mostly abandoned for years. Tenants who moved into 2B never stayed long. No one knew who or what lived there. And yet, every so often, neighbors would report faint footsteps, whispers, and doors that opened on their own. I never returned to Linden Street. But sometimes late at night, I swear I hear footsteps pacing beneath my floorboards, calling my name.